Everybody, excuse me. Welcome everybody, thank you for coming. The first thing I'd like to do is congratulate you on turning up and having the guts to come out and find a bit of truth for once. It takes a lot of guts, I know it does, and it's time to stand up and speak up and have the guts. So a round of applause to you, thank you very much. First thing I'm going to do. Make no mistake about it, we are in a war. Chemtrails, stroke Geo-Engineering, call it what you will, are a significant arm of that war on humanity. Chemtrails, we're going to try and figure out a few answers to questions tonight. Chemtrails, Geo-Engineering presentation. There are some people who don't like calling it chemtrails, don't like calling it Geo-Engineering. Aerosol spraying, call it what you like, we're being poisoned from the skies. So splitters and lumpers, knock yourselves out. I run the Free Truth Show on These Changing Times Radio.ning.com. Get a plug in there. And I've been doing it for about 3 years, off and on the radio, doing YouTube videos on the Free Truth Show and Facebook, anywhere I can, or Fedbook as I like to call it. Anywhere I can to get the message out to people. So support the radio show, tune in when you can, Tuesday nights 11 o'clock, etc. I often bring on people who like to discuss what's happening in their world and their worldview. So the questions we're going to come up with and try and answer tonight are: what are chemtrails? Who is spraying us? Why are they spraying us? And how? You can see here, that's a classic chemtrail coming out of the aircraft. They're usually unmarked military jets. This is actually a view from space. It wasn't like that about 15 years ago. And if you do happen to see satellite images before 15 years ago like that, then it's a safe bet they're doctored, as NASA is doctoring satellite images, as is your weather girl, or boy. So, chemtrail, contrail. You can see the difference. This was probably laid about a minute ago, and this is being laid now, and it's already dissipating. I do remember the sky as a kid with lots of contrails, and although they were rare, I admit that. It's since come to light that the contrails may be magnetising the sky also. So, possibly unhealthy, definitely. So the difference is, between a contrail, it's condensation trail. It dissipates after 30 seconds to a minute tops. These hang around and form banks of cloud and white out the sky, and when you see them being sprayed, you can see gravity pulling down the heavy metals. It's not rising up or out, they're coming down straight away, plumes, and then they spread out usually and form banks of cloud and hang around for hours. Another example, chemtrail, contrail. Some of you will have seen this talk before, that there are some new elements, hence I was shuffling around with the papers, because there are some new stories in and I've added new elements, so hang in there. This is Bournemouth, the day of the Bournemouth Air Festival. And what a festival it was. It's my belief, having studied HARP and cloud seeding, that they absolutely chucked the rain down on us with cloud seeding, because the year before they had to cancel. It's a lot of money. So I'm convinced, having spoken to one of the RAF guys on the ground who was a bit young and leaked, that it was weather modification that caused thousands upon thousands of damage to this town and homes. But got to have their air festival to make their money. Here we have some Spitfires and Hurricanes, the proud days of the RAF who stood against Hitler and tyranny. And here we have chemtrails possibly from the RAF or NATO, fighting tyranny, fighting terrorism. No, we are the terrorists. Apparently, anyone who is anti-government. It's very Soviet, isn't it? That term, anti-government. Alan Watt from Cutting Through the Matrix makes a good point about that. So there we are. There's the pavilion, and lest we forget, which I kind of find a macabre kind of irony in that. The reason I show a Revell kit is because they're more detailed. This is a KC-135 Boeing Strato tanker. This is one of the main planes they use, along with McDonnell Douglas and various other ones, apparently a Sentinel, which I'll come to. And you can see that it's ideally designed to bring a massive payload. And they talk about megatons of aluminium oxide and sulfates being cast into the atmosphere. And David Keith, the geo-engineer, says, it's very cheap. Cost is not a problem. But to hell with your health, I guess. There's a classic example of chemtrails spreading out and forming the milky white cloud. Again, spreading out and forming this milky white cloud. This is a blue sky over Hanover, Germany, I believe, during the volcano from Iceland. What a lovely day. And this is after. I was in Spain actually, and I couldn't get home at all because the French trains were on strike as well. So very, very difficult to not get the difference there. And again, you get these kind of coloured effects. Sometimes they form Chem bows. I've seen an upside down Chem bow in Ibiza, and very strange kind of coloration there. That is usually, tests have shown that it's ethylene dibromide, highly carcinogenic. And here is apparently this is Sirius aviaticus, according to Wikipedia. The last 5 pictures I've shown you is what you can expect to find on Wikipedia if you're a bit curious about contrails. You look up contrails, you want to know the difference, you go to Wikipedia, they show you these 5 examples. Very trusted site, yeah? So that sorts that out for the newbie. Again, this is actually a HARP sky, where they throw up electromagnetic pulses from Alaska or Norway or Wales. Actually, there's one in Wales, and they triangulate, and the sky becomes a plasma, and you get this typical kind of ribbing effect. More contrails. No? Chemtrails, right. Excuse my flippant attitude, you develop a kind of gallows humour after 3 or 4 years. Gets you through. I'm sure you can all relate to that. Eaton County, Michigan, USA. By the way, this is global. This is a global black operation. This is California, 2010. There's a few examples. California again. Can you see all right when I stand in the way? It's probably not actually. There we are, to stand out of the way when I'm showing it. This is the Open Skies Treaty. The Open Skies Treaty. It's a committee supported by the Forum for Security, Cooperation Support Unit, and the OSCE Secretariat. Again, sounds very Soviet, doesn't it? The central focus of the committee is to discuss all questions related to compliance with treaties' provisions. The treaty, which is designed to promote openness and transparency in military activities, established a regime of observation flights over the territory of its signatories. This is how they're able to do it and fly wherever they like. Strictly in an observational role, you see. Signatories are allowed to conduct observation flights using unarmed fixed-wing aircraft to gather information about military forces and activities of other state parties from Vancouver to Vladivostok. The treaty also envisages the possible extension of the open skies regime to additional areas such as crisis management and protection of the environment. Crisis management. Alan Watt from cuttingthroughthematrix.com is one of the best minds and best genuine minds on the planet regarding the New World Order agenda. I'd recommend it. He says about the Open Skies Treaty. Now that tells you why would something to do with military establishments and nuclear weaponry, etc., why would they have to go into crisis management and protection of the environment? Protection, not observation, but protection of the environment, and below it has treaties and a list of the countries. There are more joining all the time because this is happening on a world scale, and when you see the amount of stuff that's sprayed daily pretty well over your heads, you realise this is drifting from hundreds and hundreds of miles and sometimes thousands of miles to other countries that ultimately no one can stay away from it. However, these are the main treaty members, and they will see the spraying over their heads, which is nothing to do, obviously, with observation. These are contrails, condensation trails. Condensation trails, as an aircraft comes across the horizon, you'll see it. A few hand spans behind the craft, you'll see the tail of the condensation disappearing as moisture would have to. It can't sit there forever like a big cycle in the atmosphere. It dissipates into the dry air and disappears. The ones we see are not condensation. They're chemical, and remember what I just said, the treaty also envisages the possible extension of the open skies to additional areas which as crisis management and protection of the environment. And then it lists all the countries, most of Europe, apart from Switzerland. Switzerland does get sprayed anyhow, and so does China. The real intent of the Open Skies Treaty was simply to deal with a threat from out there, the environment, you see. But it's also to do with controlling people, crisis management. Remember, there is a United Nations effort and the World Health Organization that's part of the United Nations unelected governing body, already years ago talked about lacing certain water supplies with tranquilizers to calm people who might just want to get rather nasty if their country was being taken over. That's the United Nations, folks, the UN, one. Hillary Clinton, the United States, CFR, the United States believes that it is essential for the Open Skies Treaty to remain a vital instrument in our Euro-Atlantic conventional arms control toolbox. That's lovely, isn't it? Hillary Clinton, she added, we will encourage new thinking about applying open skies towards emerging challenges and threats. I'm guessing that's people who don't like being poisoned from the sky, organising themselves. So that's the OSCC, the Open Skies Treaty. That's Peterborough, January 2012. I'll leave you to take a good look at that while I get some notes on it. This is from the Worcester News. These are the new elements I've been speaking about. The Worcester News from the 17th of January 2012, not long ago, 11:30 AM. Spy in the sky mystery as aircraft circles city. Is there something, by Richard Vermails from worcesternews.co.uk. Is there something we should know? What appears to be a spy plane has been spotted circling the city, but its purpose is a mystery. The plane, which looks to be a Sentinel twin-jet aircraft, was seen in the clear blue sky above Worcester yesterday. It was about 2,000 feet. The RAF air traffic controllers who were unable to shed any light on its identity. That's because they're usually unmarked. Let's take another. I wish I could get a closer look at that, but you'll see generally on the top of them, along the wings, no numbers. Illegal, against civil aviation and military law. Got to be identified. Otherwise it could be under attack from the skies. And despite the Worcester News putting in calls to civilian air traffic controllers, it still remains a mystery. It's not the first time, etc., etc. But it's the first time this type of plane has been spotted. It was photographed. The military version, the Raytheon Sentinel, has a distinct bulge under the front of the cockpit, probably full of aluminum oxide, which can be seen on the photo, and the RAF operates a complement of the planes from RAF Waddington. An RAF spokesman said Waddington had no planes out over the area yesterday between the times it was sighted. Twitter user Sean Mooney appears to contradict that, however, when he said, "I can confirm it was the Sentinel of 5 Squadron Waddington as I work on it." The Ministry of Defence has announced its RAF Sentinel planes adapted to carry sophisticated radar. Radar, 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 whitewash, whitewash, spin, 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 radar. They're not going to tell you. What they don't mention here, this is the spin, is that the trails seem to be lasting a bit longer than usual. Well, maybe it's normal now, maybe people don't question it. They're so used to 15 years of it. If you speak to somebody who's 15 years old, they're not going to know the difference, are they? So maybe it is normal that we're being sprayed like bugs. But it doesn't mention anything about, obviously, chemtrails or geoengineering, weather modification, which is ongoing and admitted by many of the geoengineer scientists I'm about to introduce you to. Again, this is from somewhere else, another newspaper. NATO pilots use Peterborough airspace for training. Lovely, isn't it? But however, the public, they take pictures like this. That's some training exercise, isn't it?
Take a picture because it looks pretty.
I mean, presumably that drifted in, because no plane super tanker would be able to do that over the church in such a small space. So maybe that drifted in, but still, that's quite some manoeuvre. I've seen big X's in the sky, asterisks. I've even seen a compass with a square over it. But again, excuse my humour. Let me look at some of the patents. Now that's the policy implications for greenhouse warming. I'll get to that in a bit. When we look at some of the patents, here we have stratospheric Wells-back seeding for reduction of global warming. This invention relates to a method for the reduction of global warming resulting from the greenhouse effect, and in particular to a method which involves the seeding of the Earth's stratosphere with Wells-bark-like materials. Most current approaches to reduce global warming are to restrict the release of various greenhouse gases such as CO2, big problem, CFC and methane. I blame the cows personally, obviously. These imply the need to establish new regulations and the need to monitor various gases and to enforce the regulations. One technique proposed to seed the metallic particles was to add the tiny particles to the fuel of jetliners so that the particles would be emitted from the jet engine exhaust while the airliner was at its cruising altitude. And there are hundreds and hundreds of these patents online or in the patent office. They've been at it for a very long time and planning this for a very long time. While this method would increase the reflection of visible light incident from space, the metallic particles would trap the long wavelength black body radiation released from the Earth. This could result in net increase in global warming. It is therefore an object of the present invention to provide a method for reduction of global warming due to greenhouse effect, which permits heat to escape through the atmosphere. Such materials can include the class of materials, Wells-back materials, the oxides of metals, aluminium oxide, are also suitable for the purpose. Well, we know from analysis and tests from Carnacom.com, from various other independent scientists across the planet, scientists, that we found barium salts, the stuff you drink so they can x-ray you, see what's wrong with you, and other radioactive things like strontium, bacteria, red blood cells, ethylene dibromide, and virtually everything. I've seen a United States Air Force pilot training manual called Chemtrails, and they list all the things that may be in them. It goes on, very scientific, talk about the weight of these things. It is presently believed that particle sizes in the 10 to 100 micron range would be suitable for the seeding purposes. Larger particles would tend to settle to the Earth more quickly. So they can stay up there for years, the aluminium oxide. Aluminium is linked with, causes Alzheimer's, almost forgot then, Alzheimer's type effects, and memory loss, generally bad for your system. It gets into your blood and passes through the blood-brain barrier. You mix it with barium, it becomes even more lethal. This is Dennis Kucinich, who is probably one of the only people in Congress to stand up and get an act together, get his act together if you like, the Space Preservation Act, a bill to preserve the cooperative peaceful means of space, peaceful uses of space for the benefit of all mankind, humankind, very PC, by permanently prohibiting the basing of weapons in space by the United States, and to require the President to take action to adopt and implement a world treaty banning space-based weapons. And here, this is a copy of the Act. Chemtrails. It talks about electronic, psychotronic, or information weapons. Chemtrails, high-altitude, ultra-low frequency weapon systems, plasma, electromagnetic, sonic or ultrasonic weapons, laser weapons, chemical, biological, climate or tectonic weapons. That infers that they can cause earthquakes. Well, they can. I'll come to that later. So chemtrails are in there, and funny enough, that term was removed from the Act. It's not there anymore. Presumably from a bit of bad press. This is the US Defense Secretary at the time, talking with Michael Portillo. Michael Portillo, who you may remember, was the chap that sat on the Panorama program roughly a year before 7/7 blew up on us, and discussed the likelihood of a terrorist attack in 3 tube stations and a road vehicle. And they went through all the likely scenarios, and I'd very much like to ask Michael Portillo what he thought of that coincidence. And the list goes on. There's a great film I encourage everyone to see, 7/7, The Ripple Effect. Do you have it? For sale here, I think, Margaret. Yeah. So, yeah, coincidence. But this chap on the left is the chap I want to speak to you about. My notes are a bit all over the shop. I've actually forgotten his name, that's terrible. William Cohen, sorry about that. That's the Alzheimer's. William Cohen was the US Defense Secretary, and he spoke of the weather weapons and weather technology. Former US Defense Secretary William Cohen warned that terrorists are engaging even in an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter the climate, set off volcanoes and earthquakes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. It's real, and that's the reason why we have to intensify our efforts. Nice tie.
Nice eyes. What's wrong with him?
Yeah, very Aryan looking, isn't he? But there he is. There's a US Defense Secretary admitting that these technologies exist. What he's omitting is the fact that the US administration and their military are in fact the real terrorists. So it's all a big boogeyman game, isn't it? But people die from these monsters, and that's why we do what we do, to try and stop it. Because the less people can be mugged along, the less hopefully it may happen. The House of Commons report is the regulation of geoengineering. People may ask, well, surely our government wouldn't do this to us. They have our best interests at heart. They love us. They're not career politicians. The House of Commons Science and Technology Committee, the regulation of geoengineering, 2009 to 10. Report, together with, I'm going to take this article from Paul Joseph Watson from InfoWars. There's not many great journalists, and I don't mean that in the sonic sense, in Britain. Whoever he's worked for, doesn't matter. He's one of the best, so I'm going to read a bit of his article. The House of Commons report entitled The Regulation of Geoengineering was compiled by the Government Science and Technology Committee in collaboration with the US House of Representatives Science and Technology Committee. It demonstrates how seriously both governments are looking at the idea of manipulating the planet's climate. So they're talking about it in the House of Commons, regulating geoengineering, be it from sulfur dioxides and aerosol spraying from aircraft, or imitating the effect of a volcano to block out the sun, putting space mirrors up, you name it. They're sitting there and they're talking about it. We may need geoengineering as a plan B, if in the event of the failure of plan A, the reduction of greenhouse gases, we are faced with a highly disruptive climate change, the report states. If we start work now, it will provide the opportunity to fully explore the technological, environmental, political and regulatory issues, it continues. The report also notes the idea of, there's something missing here, isn't it? They're already doing it. They're already spraying for the last 15 years around the planet. But they're just discussing it. We might have to do that in the future. But we're going to need funding. All you've got to do is look up every day. We recommend that the government give greater priority to public engagement on geoengineering by, for example, showing how it relates to its policy on the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions. It describes several different proposed methods of geoengineering, including spraying sulfate aerosols into the stratosphere, to mimic the cooling effect produced by volcanic eruptions, as well as placing mirrors in space to reflect the sun's rays away from the Earth, a technique known as solar radiation management. We're gods, let's manage the planet. We can manage the climate, we can change it. You don't have to tell the public. They can just die like bugs. To hell with the rivers being polluted as well. We can clean it up, we've got the technology, probably just do it. Something wrong with these people, these scientists. We're living under a scientific dictatorship. That's what it is, that's what all the think tanks are still discussing now. A Brave New World, revisited, if you like. Aldous Huxley, Bertrand Russell, all these elite, aristocratic psychopaths are running the planet, and perhaps always have done. And they're guiding society, and it's death for anyone who opposes it or hasn't earned enough money over generations to be elite and special and a different species, which is what they actually think they are. So that's what we're dealing with. Banksters with a lot of money, a lot of gall, and absolutely no conscience. That is your enemy. That is the war on humanity. But they've got to dress it up, and they own the media. Rothschild owns Reuters, which gives the news to AP, Associated Press, which then dishes it out across the planet. and the journalists are given handouts, etc. And most of them don't even write the stories, they just get drunk in the Red Lion next to the House of Commons and take the wage packet. But I digress. I've actually lost my list of who these people are, but I should remember. Oh, this is the President of the Royal Society. People involved in this House of Commons report. Yes, a highly Freemasonic society, very old, the Royal Society. Sir Paul Nurse, which I think is a great name for somebody geo-engineering the planet without any regard to the consequences of your health. Mr. Nurse. One notable member of the Royal Society is James Lovelock, an eco-fascist who advocates ending democracy and instituting an authoritative elite to oversee global climate management. He's also a patron of the Optimum Population Institute, a notorious UK-based public policy group that campaigns for the gradual decline in the global human population. Campaigns for it to what it sees as a sustainable level, and you'll hear that word everywhere. My toilet is sustainable, it's everywhere. The United Nations tells me what kind of toilet I can use. I need a sustainable visit to the loo. It's everywhere. Sustainable, sustainable, sustainable. Apparently we're not sustainable, so we've got to go. These are the nuts that I'm introducing. He's an ardent advocate of geoengineering, James Lovelock, in the name of controlling the climate. In 2007, Lovelock, this is still Sir Paul Nurse, Sir James Lovelock, Gaia, Mother Earth, books from, in the 90s. He proposed laying vast swathes of pipes under the world's oceans in order to pump water from the bottom of the seas, rich in nutrients but mostly dead, to the top, for algae to breed, a chemical known to seed sunlight reflecting clouds, dimethyl sulfide. So that's the House of Commons report. What they failed to mention is that they've been doing it for years. Who's patron of the Optimum Population Trust in the UK? I thought I'd include this nice predatory symbolism here. Sir David. Now, we've all grown up with Sir David, the big father figure who's been dishing out lots of wonderful information. Here is a bird which is ultimately far more important than you. I want to depopulate the planet, and I'm a psychopath, naturally. So while he's cavorting with gorillas, he's actually enjoying the demise, or planning the demise of the public, and he's obviously on board as the figurehead. It's a good idea! Jump off a cliff for the planet. There's too many of you anyway, etc., etc. Sick man. Another psychopath. Here's one. John P. Holdren, the current White House science czar. Of Obama administration. He wrote a book in 1977 called Eco-Science. He's a White House science czar. He's a key advisor who infamously co-authored a book in which he called for a planetary regime. You can get the book, it's about £500. He called for a planetary regime to enforce draconian population control measures such as forced abortion, infanticide and mandatory sterilisation. In April last year, Holdren revealed that the high-level talks had already taken place to explore the possibility of geoengineering the environment by shooting pollution particles into the upper atmosphere to reflect the sun's rays. It's got to be looked at, he said. It's got to be looked at. He's quoted as saying, "We don't have the luxury of taking any approach off the table." The AP, Associated Press, also reported that Holden said he had raised the concept in administration discussions. Well, Obama has no real power. His job is to lie to the public, any politician, lie to the public like a good psychopath, and sign a few treaties and have a few prostitution parties now and again at your expense. Such interest in... So these people are the scientists behind the White House table, the House of Commons. They advise, you see. They yield extraordinary power. Who are they? Apparently when he walks into a room, even Rockefeller almost bows down. Who are these people? Where do they breed them? Such intense interest in exploring geoengineering and implementing an overarching global authority on the matters mirrors publications penned by the ultra-elite Council on Foreign Relations. In a document entitled Geo-Engineering Workshop on Unilateral Planetary Scale Geoengineering, the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, which is in itself a sister wing of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which sets policy virtually worldwide, of which Margaret Thatcher said, we don't leave. She's quoted as saying, Margaret Thatcher, wonder why she stripped the country so much. Why did she make so many big mistakes? Shutting the coal mines, everything down. Why did she make such vast mistakes that didn't benefit the people? Whoops-a-daisy. Because after office, she goes to Canada and gives a talk entitled The New World Order. That's who she is. She's Royal Institute of International Affairs, and she's quoted as saying, I'm digressing, but I want to give you an idea who these people are and who real power is. We don't leave government when we leave office. We go higher. We join the shadow government. That way we're not accountable to the people. It's more efficient. We can get things done. So off she goes and gives a talk on the New World Order. Yeah, so the CFR is the sister wing of that. I've been there. You knock on their blue Masonic sky blue door, the big lion's knocker, and they're in St James's Square. It's a fairly innocuous looking building, a stone's throw from the Buckingham Palace, that gives royal charters for this kind of thing to the Royal Society, etc., paedophilia, etc. Anyway, Fred Singer, president of the Science Environmental Policy Project and a skeptic of man-made global warming theories, has warned that the consequences of tinkering with the planet's delicate ecosystem could have far-reaching dangers. If you do this on a continuous basis, you would depress the ozone layer and cause all sides. So there are all sorts of problems. So there are voices of dissent now and again. They don't last long in their jobs, or worse, or both. I'll give you an example of that later too. Even Greenpeace's chief UK scientist, a staunch advocate of the man-made global warming explanation, Doug Parr, has attempts to geoengineer the planet as outlandish and dangerous. We're talking about Greenpeace a bit later on as well. So that's a great article from Paul Joseph Watson. That's the book that he wrote, Eco-Science, John P. Holden, the current White House Science Czar. Some more chemtrails spreading out. That was probably laid about 10 seconds before this shot was taken. About a minute. You can see the heavy metals oxide beginning to pour out from the gravity itself. It's not going up. And they've obviously been at it all day there. So they're painting the sky. Perhaps they think they're artists. Quite why, quite how you get into a plane and do that. What kind of story they must tell you. What kind of mind control you must be under, or something, or drugs, or don't worry, we'll give you advanced military medicine. For whatever reason, it's killing a lot of people and absolutely devastating the environment and the rivers and the soils. If you don't care about yourselves, at least you'll want to leave a clean planet behind. Because we're being trained to... our survival instincts have been trained out of us through the media, like we don't matter. Euthanasia, it's fine. Have an abortion, it's fine. Etc. Get sterilised, it's fine. Save the planet, etc. But they're going to come out very soon and say, yep, we're doing it, but it's for your own good. And by that time everyone will be like, yeah, I think that's my opinion. Yeah, I agree, and that's my opinion. Climate gate, I'm going to skip all the climate gate and sort of global warming nonsense, because it has been exposed as a fraud, and I did cover it a lot in the last talk, so I'll leave all the articles here for people to see. Climate gates, when all the emails from the University of East Anglia was hacked, God bless them, the hackers, and showed that they were fixing the figures and frauding and threatening scientists to hide the decline in temperature. It's not actually warming. CO2 is not our enemy. And by the way, a large percentage of us is carbon. So I guess that's us out the window as well. I wanted to talk about the SPICE project. Here's some more examples. I think that's California again, or Arizona. Well, people are complaining in Arizona now that there's no blue skies. An inconvenient arrest. Al Gore, he's the poster boy for the global warming, climate change now. Scam, fraud. Again, there's the Church of Climatology. I thought I'd lighten things up a bit. What a guy!
All of them in the zoo, eh?
His illustration.
Yeah.
Obama! Okay, the SPICE project, I'll get to this. The First Global Revolution is a book by the Club of Rome that mentions that mankind is the enemy, etc., etc. Sorry my notes are all over the place, but when I went to the printing shop, the internet cafe, it was now a shop. So I had to run down the other side of town with 2 broken ribs. That's why they're all a bit all over the place. A bit of a shame. But this is the First Global Revolution. It's a report by the infamous, that's in my hand, the infamous Club of Rome think tank. This is how the world is ran, by private organisations, by charities, by think tanks, all working for the various royal families and the international bankers. They've always ran the show. First Global Revolution, a report by the Council of the Club of Rome. On page 75 of their 1990 publication, it would seem that humans need a common motivation, namely a common adversary, to organise and act together in the vacuum. Such a motivation must be found to bring the divided nations together to face an outside enemy, either a real one or else one invented for the purpose. This is a massive think tank, one of the big daddies along with the Royal Institute of International Affairs. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. Fit the bill. I'll read that again. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like, that would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it's only through changed attitudes and behaviour that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. You're the problem. They create the problem. It's the Hegelian dialectic, I guess. You know, you can probably repeat it back to me. Problem, reaction, solution. So they've created the problem. We react and beg that you do something about the climate because it's terrible. What will you do? And they come up with the solution. Geo-Engineering, etc. While they've been bumping people off since well before World War II. The SPICE project, you're going to love this. Climate fix technical test put on hold. That's basically, they want to pump lots of stuff into the air and create a volcano effect. But it's having a delay because more talk with the public and more consultation is needed. It means they've probably done it, you know. So I'm going to move on from the climate. I'm also going to skip the Dorset biological trials. If you're worried that are they doing it now or not, they've done it before. In Dorset from 1963 to 75, I believe, they parked a ship, the ice whale, off the Dorset coast and sprayed lots of nasty stuff, biological chemicals, E. coli, anthrax mimicking agents and various other stuff. And then they had there's Porton Down, Biological Trial Centre, Porton Down experimental place. I think it's still open, is it?
Yeah.
And asked whether they were still doing things like that now, the MOD said, well, we can't possibly comment on ongoing operations, etc. You know. That's the ice whale. And then they had various monitoring stations set up to check out how everybody was doing. In case the Russians attacked, you know. That's great. There's all the, you can check this out, the DICE trials and Dorset biological trials. Please check it out. I'm just saving a bit of time. Owning the weather by 2025. Again, a document written for the United States Air Force. I'm not blaming the United States for everything. This is a global problem. NATO is spraying us. Unmarked military jets are spraying us. Private companies like Evergreen Air, which is a CIA front, may be spraying us. A lot of good indications that they may be spraying. When you look at some of the people involved, then it's very likely that this Evergreen Air story is real. Evergreen International. So owning the weather by 2025, and they go into great detail, at great length, about how they can manipulate the atmosphere and own the weather by 2025. I'd say they were pretty on target. Pretty well on target. Applying weather modification to military operations, etc., etc., etc. So big reports, owning the weather by 2025. Check that out. This is how the chemtrails spread out. And what goes up must come down, I guess. So our job is to alert the public that this is happening and encourage others to do the same. It was like that on Friday the 13th, actually, in January around Dorset. I've got video, over 50 hours of footage that I personally filmed myself of Dorset being absolutely hammered, generally, with the chemtrails. And you can watch them spread out. Go to my YouTube channel, sorry to plug it, but Free Truth Show, as you live here, you'll see 50 hours of aircraft spraying contrails, chemtrails, the difference, everything. Free Truth Show, YouTube. And you see that a lot. They're flying a bit close together, aren't they? That's not the Bournemouth Air Festival. That's quite common. A lot of people are alarmed. They ring in County Clare the other day. They rang in, hundreds of people rang into the station, concerned that, about these flights doing circles. So it was in Clare, County Clare as well. That's virtually the west of Ireland. What's in them? A lot of people around the world are suffering from skin complaints. We spoke to the Mayor of Salisbury. Sam handed out some leaflets with me on the SKID day, the Salisbury Chemtrail Info Day. In Southampton, Salisbury, we're going to Reading next to hand out leaflets. And luckily we bumped into the Mayor of Salisbury, and his wife had to have, out riding her bike, and the bits of skin that were exposed became very rashy, and she had to have her rings cut off because her hands swelled out so much. And the mayor was very much in agreement that it is going on, and he's not happy about it.
He won't be there for long then.
So that was quite a surprise. So there are people there available to help you. You may be in the lodge, I don't know, but there are people there to help. Actually, incidentally, I'll be taking questions after the talk, if that's okay. So I'm a bit all over the place and I'm easily distracted, so forgive me if I'm ignoring any questions or signals from the audience. We found, well, I haven't found it, Carnicom Institute. The Carnicom Institute has found various fibres. People are suffering the health effects bad. We know that flu-like symptoms that persist and hang around. We know that Alzheimer's from the aluminium oxide is a problem. We know that bronchial problems are through the roof. We know that allergies have spiraled out of control. We're all getting zapped by peanuts. That's the problem, yeah? That's why asthma is through the roof. Cancers are 1 in 2 now. When I was a kid, I didn't know anybody with cancer, actually. And by the time I got to 15, I perhaps knew a friend or that was suffering from it, that knew a friend or something. But now, apparently it's 1 in 2. And doctors are taught that it's quite normal. The doctor's out of school, out of medical school now. Just give them lots of drugs, or actually you're lucky if you're seen by a doctor these days. If you go to an NHS hospital in England, you are taking your life, you are risking your life. So even minor operations really. They're switching off people's food and liquids and everything, they're murdering people in hospitals. Now that does sound a bit nuts, but I encourage you to do your own research and I guarantee you'll come to the same conclusion. So Morgellons it's not a disease, it's the result of bioengineered fibres that are coming out from the chemtrails. Whole towns are getting problems with this after heavy spraying. Whole towns are becoming sick after heavy spraying in America, etc. And these are the type of effects that you get. I know somebody in Hastings, Anne from Hastings Against Chemtrails, she's got fibres coming out of her fingers and thumb. I've seen video footage of a woman wiping the bottom of her foot, and these white fibres are just continuously coming out, like little worms. And a lot of the fibres are self-replicating. What does that tell you? A lot of them, over hundreds of degrees temperature, when they're exposed to them, don't burn. What does that tell you? Some are even fluorescent under the microscope. So we're talking about, I don't know, nanotechnology or something. Now I'm going a bit way off the track here, but it is way off the track. But the effects and the lesions that people are getting and suffering, I know one woman was supposed to give a talk, bless her heart, she couldn't do it. Her daughter had committed suicide after being driven to drink because no doctor would help her. People are desperate. I even heard somebody jumping out of a plane or a helicopter or something. People are so desperate from the itching, you know, it makes your skin crawl. So apparently every one of us has these kind of, a large percentage of us, according to Clifford Carnicom from Carnicom Institute, where all the analysis is done and can be seen on the web for everyone to publish. It's under a lot of pressure. You can see these fibres and various other things. Red blood cells, I'll show you. Here's some of the fibres. At 60 magnification. Nano communications array. I'm not certain of that, but they do look very strange and they shouldn't be in your body, whatever they are. These kind of things. Could be anything. But also you get types, fluorescent ones that are at the end there. These fibres are fluorescent. I mean, what the hell are these things? They light up. As well as the heavy metals that are in your blood. None of this should be in your system. That's the gel. There's the gel been found in various things. And the funny thing is, each patient has, many patients have different reactions to this stuff, and some don't get affected at all. About 25% don't get affected at all. And there you can see lots of things from this. That's Vegas. Vegas all spreading out, chemtrail, chemtrail, chemtrail. And another big problem is the tetrad towers that you see on the buildings all around town, and every town in the Western world, as far as I know. It may be everywhere. And these pulse out. It's supposed to be for emergency services, police, radios, communications. But people are getting ill when they're living here. And because we don't talk to each other very much these days, I share wood and apples with my neighbour, and I do it deliberately. People I've never spoken to on the road, I've started speaking to them a bit more. Because we don't do that anymore, people who live on these blocks of flats in Canada, for example, one example, they're all getting ill. And because they didn't speak to each other, they didn't know that they were all getting exactly the same symptoms once these things went up. So if you've got them by your house, campaign to get them removed, or move yourself, or do something else. Here are the strange things. I forget what that is, and my notes are moving a bit around. But that's the red blood cells that have been found. That's Chester, Arkansas. Pretty patterns in the sky. That's a kind of an asterisk. And I've seen one over Bournemouth, I'll show you it later, over Procter & Gamble. One subject I did want to get to was the BBC spin. The BBC is not independent. Sorry, never was. Great plays, etc., but lots of programming. And they failed to mention here that that wasn't a real cloud. Maybe a researcher missed that one, or nobody, it's so common. Oh, it looks like a fan or something, yeah. That's from the weather show. But I've seen the weather show where they're showing clear chemtrails, and this is where we're winning with the information, because now, as opposed to a few years ago, a year ago even, we're seeing spin, spin, spin of these. They're having to come out and address the fact that these chemtrails are happening in the sky is different. Or, that's odd. Isn't that odd? But don't worry about it. Everything's fine. I'm going to talk to you like a child. If you notice, that's a technique. The presenters talk to you like a child. You see? Mustn't scare the sheep. It's actually a neuro-linguistic technique, I believe. And I've seen the weather girl on breakfast, BBC Breakfast, blonde-haired girl, I forget which, and she's going, this is nothing to worry about, this is a strange phenomenon, that's, it's quite rare, but next, don't worry about it. I've got another one here from Chicago. This is Tammy Souza from Fox News, Chicago, talking about the weather and how they're having a heat wave in January 2012. Having a heat wave, a bit like we did in December, wasn't it? December? We had a kind of unnatural heat wave. Nice, but what's causing it? There she goes. She said, these are the skies over Chicago today. These wispy clouds here, they're nothing really to worry about. They're probably clear. And that's actually, I would say, personally I would say, from 3 years or 4 years of looking at the sky, that's chemtrail. Sorry about the accent. I love Americans, I'm not taking the mickey. But in fact, on, I think it was January the 5th, luckily someone took a photograph and independently put it on YouTube, showing the real reason why it looked like that day. Chicago, Chicago. So there's the truth. While Fox News is not telling you the whole truth. Why is that? Because they're banker-owned whores. That's Hanover, Germany. Hanover, Germany. Tic-tac-toe, anybody? Minnesota. Minnesota. Should have put my computer there, shouldn't I? That's Minnesota. That's Harpy Sky from HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. Please look it up. I'll get to it. That's one I took. The date is wrong. It's that was this last year, the end of last year. I think it was October, November. Pretty much like the BBC one. Huh. That's Dorset, England, Parkston, Alderney. Again, more chemtrails. That one's being freshly laid, you see. Is that one just about to crash? Should we bring up the RAF? We're concerned. We're very worried that some kind of Battle of Britain is going on or something. They're really chemtrails, mate. I rang up the RAF. We're putting you on notice, I said. These chemtrails, hold on a second, chemtrails? Yeah, the chemtrails, the aerosol spraying, the Geo-Engineering, the weather modification. Yeah, I think they're contrails, contrails. Flight Lieutenant Lytton fobbed me off, put me onto their PR department. Everyone's got a PR department now. It's called that. Funky name for propaganda. I didn't even contact them. Who's delivering this stuff? How are they getting all this megatons of aluminium oxide? And one of the people, it's Rent-A-Kill. I used to work for Rent-A-Kill. And I still do. No, I'm joking. Rent-A-Kill is one of the companies, and Trimac, Rent-A-Kill is like a UK subsidiary of it or something. Trimac have been named as a possible supplier of the trucks to the places where, we don't know where, because it's a black operation,